Hello everyone, my name is Libby Adkins, and today I'm going to be teaching you all about a little-known painting by Andrea de Giusto. It is called Assumption of the Virgin with Saints, and as that name suggests, that is exactly what the work is about. We see the Virgin, or the Virgin Mary, ascending up into heaven after she has died. She is accompanied by some winged angels, as we may expect to be in heaven, and two saints. The first thing we notice is the Virgin. She is in white, surrounded by this large golden almond-shaped halo known as a mandorla, and it is meant to denote an important religious figure or a sort of heavenly space. These are common in Byzantine Dormitions, but they are seen in Italy as well. She looks to have a distended belly, which could allude to her fertility, but there's absolutely no evidence she is supposed to actually be pregnant. That is extremely rare. You may have noticed the two big-headed figures at the bottom of the work. They are the saints. On the left, we have Saint Jerome, which we know because of the little red hat on the ground by him. And then on the right, we have Saint Francis, who is in almost every Italian Renaissance painting. He's kind of everywhere. Between the both of them, there is a sarcophagus, which is meant to hold a dead body, and it is filled with flowers. That is very likely a reference to something known as the Hortus Conclusus, which means enclosed garden. It is meant to allude to the Virgin's Immaculate Conception, the enclosed, unbreached garden, referring to her unbroken hymen. Overall, we are seeing a lot of references to fertility, which would be quite common for a married couple to have in their home. First, although, I want to point out this tiny little emblem that is even farther down on the work, because it tells us that this painting actually belonged to a member of the Gotti family, most likely Agnolo Gotti, who was an unmarried man. Now, before we get too deep into the fact that this bachelor owned such a devotional piece, I first need to give a little background on Agnolo Gotti. His family was very well known in Florence. His father worked with the very famous Giotto, and the family was known for their art and affluence. Agnolo himself was actually a very successful independent painter, and he was quite well known in that social circle. Florence was also what we call a face-to-face society, in that it was quite small and functioned off of community and interacting with others. Taking those things into account, it is safe to assume that Agnolo Gotti, being the successful Florentine man he was, would have been friends with his fellow painters, including our very own Andrea de Giusto. We can assume that the two were acquaintances at the very least, since the painter circle was pretty small. It was a close group, but knowing the Florentine tradition and the iconography and style of the painting, I'm willing to take it a step further and say that they may have actually been friends. After all, why would a single man commission a work all about fertility for himself? It was not common, and we know that the work must have predated his wedding because his wife's family crest is not present. It is much more likely that this would have been a gift from a friend that is meant to bring about well wishes for a betrothal or marriage. In fact, close friends were known for generous gift giving to express friendship. What if Andrea de Giusto was doing that by making his friend a special painting? We can see that de Giusto seemed to be attempting to mirror Agnolo Gotti's style. As mentioned above, his father worked closely with Giotto, and Gotti, having learned to paint from his father, utilized a style similar to him. His faces are quite flat and stocky, much like Giotto's, and he uses the same vertically stacked composition. Andrea de Giusto typically favored a more slender style for his figures, and they look much more Gothicized than Giotto's or Gotti's, and his compositions relied more on a horizontal positioning. In our assumption of the Virgin with Saints, however, he does not use his usual style. He uses that of Gotti and further Giotto. Could write off this different stylization as Andrea de Giusto just deciding to borrow from the style. He was known to be an eclectic painter, meaning that he mixed many different traditions and styles in his works. We can see this through the use of that mandorla, which is Byzantine, and the hortus conclusus that he is likely borrowing from one of his big influences, Fra Angelico. I cannot say that I have seen him borrow from this sort of style otherwise, so it is unlikely that he is doing it without reason. Also, if Agnolo Gotti or even one of his family members had in fact commissioned the work, that would have to mean that they liked his original style that they had seen before. They would not go and ask for a painting in Gotti's style when he could just make it himself. It makes much more sense to assume that Giusto was making it without Gotti's knowledge as a sort of surprise. Using his style would require Giusto to go intentionally look at Gotti's works, showing that he was inspired by him and wished to honor him. After all, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and if you're trying to make something sentimental for your friend, you just might do that. Knowing all that we do of the work, of our painters, and of Florence, it is safe to say that this painting was not just another household devotional piece. This work seems to be so much more special and sentimental than that, and it may be allowing us a glimpse into a friendship that we may have otherwise never seriously considered.